Hi, all of you wonderful scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diving Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have piqued my interest over the previous week. This week on the podcast, big Sheerwater news as they suddenly announce a partnership with Real Diving. A heroic diver sacrificed his own life trying to save another diver, knowing that he would be missing decompression stops. And Paddy are talking at the United Nations. So the first news story is about Krzysztof Bielecki, who was 48 years old and died at Mater D Hospital hours after an incident off Marsicala on Saturday. Quoting, "He was helping another diver. We don't know what happened exactly, but he knew that he was sacrificing 1 hour of decompression. It was his decision. We knew what he was he knew what he was sacrificing." Those are statements from Joanna Weerbeck, a diving instructor who was with the group of Polish divers when the accident happened on Saturday morning. The other diver, Dominik Dubaj, died before he reached the hospital. Both men were Polish, but they lived in the United Kingdom, and they had travelled to Malta last week with the group Diving Explorers. Bielecki, who's a diver with 20 years of experience, had co-founded the group of divers and was given the nickname Tato, which means dad in Polish because of his leadership and experience. And the group was exploring the Le Polynésien, which is a World War I shipwreck, which lies at a depth of about 50 meters when the accident happened. Weerbeck told the Times of Malta, I'm reading this from the Times of Malta article, said that she was taking some footage of the dive when at some point her camera stopped working and the current was strong, so she resurfaced. Quoting, "As soon as I got on the boat, the two divers popped to the surface," she said. They were both conscious at that point, but it was clear that something was wrong. Still quoting, "Tato started saying, 'chamber, chamber.' He then went back into the water to start his decompression." So he was going to try some in-water decompression, but the pain started. He did not manage to decompress, she added. The diver, quote, "sacrificed himself and knew the risks when he went to help his fellow diver in trouble. The other divers helped him back onto the boat, and after some time, the armed forces of Malta arrived to assist the pair." Dubaj died before getting to the hospital, whilst Bielecki was placed in the decompression chamber but died later that day. Quoting, "We are absolutely devastated. He is our hero, our legend. We want to carry him in our hearts and minds. We can't forget him. He was one of a kind, a good person with a big heart." It's still quite early in the investigation stage, but the Armed Forces of Malta, the AFM, they were notified about the situation at 10:30 a.m. The two men were picked up from their group's charter vessel and brought to shore by an AFM search and rescue vessel with paramedics on hand. The divers were then taken by ambulance to Malta's main hospital, with the man who'd suffered the initial problem declared dead shortly after arrival. His 48-year-old buddy was admitted in serious condition and died later in the day. Malta police, interestingly, were not informed about the incident until 12:30 p.m. Police investigations and a magistrate's inquiry are now underway. So a sad story with a sad ending. He did his best to try and save the life of another diver, and it cost him his own life. Hopefully, the investigation will be able to shed some kind of light into what might have happened. In diving industry news, Sheerwater made a rather surprise announcement that effective the 1st of August 2024, Real Diving, they describe as a premier European distributor dedicated to providing top-tier diving equipment, and Sheerwater Research Incorporated, the world's premier underwater electronics brand focused on powerful, simple, and reliable dive computers, have jointly announced a distribution partnership. Real Diving is deeply connected to the diving communities in its markets and is driven by a passion for diving and exploration. Their 1,000 square meter facility in Gothenburg houses a comprehensive inventory of dive gear supported by a team of 12 employees. Additionally, Real Diving has recently expanded its operations with a new subsidiary in the United Kingdom, enhancing its service and support capabilities in that region. So Real Diving is they're a lovely group to chat to, and they have a lot of big brands. I mean, Santi, Halcyon, Avatar dry suits, K01, Cressy sub as well, JCCR, Suex, you name it, Ammonite. Yeah, they have a lot of brands under their or that they can distribute, and now they're partnering up with Sheerwater Research, which is very interesting. The release says this strategic partnership aims to consolidate the European market and expands the Sheerwater sales network, significantly bolstering Sheerwater's brand presence and accessibility across Europe by leveraging Real Diving's extensive distribution channels and deep community connections. Sheerwater will be able to reach divers in 25 European countries, including Scandinavia, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Malta and Poland, Baltic states, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, Croatia, North Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, Albania and Greece. Quoting, this partnership with Real Diving is a significant step for Sheerwater. That was said by Josh Horoshock, the Sheerwater VP Sales and Marketing. Real's dedication to bringing inventory closer to our dealers, coupled with their incredible customer service, product knowledge, training, and regional marketing efforts, makes them a great partner for us. We are confident that this collaboration will enhance the availability and support of Sheerwater products, ensuring divers across Europe can benefit from our innovative dive equipment. Yeah, so it was only a few weeks back. I think I was reporting on Real Diving opening their new premises, which had everything. It was like a showroom. You could train there and all that kind of stuff. Very very interesting move from Sheerwater and Real Diving. It kind of makes sense because it's that kind of technical brand, and it fits into the Real Diving, the rest of the brands that they carry. So a big interesting industry move, which is hopefully going to make it a little bit easier for some divers if you currently struggle to get hold of Sheerwater equipment because they're Canadian, North American based. If you're struggling to find it in a country that you live and dive in, then hopefully this will be a little bit easier, because Real Diving, I think their HQ is in Sweden, in Gothenburg, but they do have other premises. So interesting move there. PADI and their global non-profit, the PADI Aware Foundation, are leading the charge to help end the global marine debris problem, having an influential presence at the ongoing Global Plastics Treaty discussions of the United Nations Intergovernmental Negotiations Committee, or INC. So the Global Plastics Treaty represents a unique and crucial opportunity for a worldwide coordinated initiative that effectively resolves the ongoing plastic pollution crisis. Quoting, "This year we have an incredibly significant opportunity to turn the tide on plastics and are taking on the responsibility for being the voice of the ocean and the global scuba diving community known as Ocean Torch Bearers." That was a quote from Dana Moore, the director of PADI Aware. PADI continues to take an active role in negotiations as it is debated by governments, informing decisions with critical data detailing plastic marine debris found on the bottom of the ocean floor and ensuring governments address the marine debris crisis and institute methods to safely eradicate it in the treaty. Quoting, "The current desire to develop a binding global plastics treaty presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to put in place a legal instrument to end plastic pollution. It also offers a major leap forwards towards the meeting PADI's blueprint for ocean action goal to reduce marine debris by 50% in targeted countries." PADI and PADI Aware Foundation are the only organizations representing the global recreational dive community in the ongoing official negotiations leading up to the anticipated agreement of the treaty in 2025. By taking part, we are informing and influencing decisions that affect our shared blue planet. So it is quite interesting that we're getting a voice in these kind of communications, and hopefully it'll be reflected in the treaties, whatever they do come up with, because I think most people in the world today know about plastic pollution and it getting into our waterways, but you and I as divers, we see it firsthand, and how it can affect the marine ecosystem. yeah, it's always interesting when I see little statements where it's like selected countries and targeted countries and all that. It's like, well, yeah, unless it's completely global, it's not going to have that much of an effect. We all know who like the main producers of marine plastics are, and when it enters the waterways and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, unless someone can actually talk to those countries and get them, it's really about education, and really about educating the entire population, which is easier said than done. Just because a bunch of people in suits sign a piece of paper and make it a treaty, it doesn't mean that everyone in the world suddenly knows that, oh yeah, you know what, I shouldn't be doing this. So yeah, it's there's so many cogs that need to turn together to actually create like meaningful change. Is going to take a long time and more than just a piece of paper. But yeah, we do still have to have these kind of conversations and make these treaties. Yeah, and it's interesting that the dive community is one of the voices that's hopefully informing and making those kind of changes. As far as new dive equipment, the first big one that caught my attention was that there's a new Fourth Element J2 base layer. So J2 is, I mean, it was originally designed for a cave exploration team. That's where the J2 gets its name. J2 was an underwater cave system, and they developed this base layer, very thin base layer, for the divers to wear against their skin and kind of live in. So it's very thin, it wicks moisture, it's like antimicrobial and all that kind of stuff. And I myself use it quite regularly, both in and out of the water. And yeah, now there's a bunch of new versions. It used to be just men's and women's, top and bottom, and that's it. There you go. And it was just in one color. But now there's base layer shorts. There's a base layer bra. There's short sleeve tees and long sleeve tees as well. They're both in like standard black. The previous version was in, the men's is like a kind of a grey color with some like dark flashes down underneath the arms and like orange details in the logo. The women's was black with a bit of grey down the sides and a like turquoisey, bluey green kind of details to it. But yeah, now it's all just kind of standard black, which I suppose, yeah, everything in scuba diving comes in black. But it's interesting that we're getting like shorts and short sleeve shirts. The material looks much the same. It's got this unique texture to it. I can't really describe it. It's kind of bumpy. It allows more like airflow to like move around right across your skin. But the new ones are part of Fourth Element's Ocean Positive range, which means they're made from recycled fabric. It's a GRS certified recycled polyester and packaged without plastic. The Ocean Positive J2 base layers are the perfect dry suit base layer to be worn next to the skin and then layered with your thermal undersuit. But yeah, I even like wear it on the surface in the wintertime just as an extra layer. It's really thin, so you can wear it under like anything else, and it just adds an extra layer. So yeah, it really does help you to keep you warm without adding too much bulk. And yeah, now it comes in more styles and yeah, in a standard black. I see there's a new Sea Life Sea Dragon Duo kit, so underwater video lighting. It's called the Duo 10K Plus Color Boost Underwater Photo Video Light Set. One button control for easy operation. Yeah, Sea Life have always made very simple and easy to use like underwater lighting, and they have a modular kind of system to it. So if you don't like the standard arms, you can swap them out, or you can extend them, you can add and change things. It is all like sort of push and click kind of technology. And these can pack out through 10,000 combined lumens using the two Sea Dragon 5000 COB LEDs. So it's a pair of 5,000 lumen lights, one on either side. So yeah, you're going to get a lot of light, which gives you a lot more control of your underwater images. I think that was about it as far as new dive equipment. I don't think anything else has come across my feed. So on to some Ask Mark questions. The Red Baron 11 says, asking for Mark's and others' opinions on the long hose donate method. Here's my confusion. A lot of demonstrations for the long hose primary donate say that you should ensure that the out of air diver is calmed down before switching to the necklace regulator. But I hear a lot of actual situations where the out-of-air diver is described to be so panicked that they are a threat to the donor. Yes. So if I see a dude swimming as fast as he can towards me, giving the out-of-air sign, do I want to face the 50-50 chance of him being crazy without a reg in my mouth? Obviously, I've never witnessed a real out-of-air situation, so I'd like to hear your opinion. My experience of real out-of-air divers has actually been quite calm. I don't know whether it's just the caliber of divers that I've been with, but yeah, in my experience of donating, I've just passed them the second stage, so at least they can get a breath, and then I just instinctively switch to my alternate. I think the main trick is that you're always attached, well, usually attached to your long hose. So even if something should happen, you should be able to reach a situation where you can buddy breathe with them. It's unlikely that the second stage around your neck is going to fail, and you're going to need to buddy breathe with the other diver. But usually, once they've secured that air and they've got a fresh breath, they usually calm down. I've obviously experienced divers panic, and yeah, as most people say, their logic just switches off. All they want to do is get out of the situation and get to dry land, and whether that means climbing over you or any other diver, yeah, it's going to happen. I'd never pause before putting my necklace second stage in. I'm not really sure where that's from. I think it might just be in like demonstrations that to make it clear, because when I was doing my instructor development course, I was taught to break each section of the skill into separate parts so that it's more easily digested by the student. If you do an entire skill, then they can miss out key sections and kind of forget. So I imagine this might be sort of how you're like interpreting it from what you've seen in demonstrations, but it's not quite as structured in real world as when we're demonstrating as instructors. It could just be that the demonstrations that you've seen, they're like, right, here's step number one. You notice that the out of air signal. You grab your long hose primary and you lift it over your head. You're blowing the bubbles. You pass that to the diver. The diver secures that. They breathe from it, and then you signal that you're okay and whatnot. You're still like don't have a second stage. You're still blowing bubbles because it's a calm demonstration. You then secure that second stage from your necklace. Make sure it's the right one and breathe from that. So I imagine it might be a bit of that, whereas in real world situation, you don't want to rush. I mean, especially if you're diving like certain gas mixes where the depth matters and the gas mix definitely matters. If you're diving like twin set just with a single gas on your back, then yeah, you can switch second stages without thinking too much about it. So yeah, that would be like a fluid motion for me. Take that second stage out of your mouth, pass that to your buddy, and whilst that's going on, I'm switching to my alternate so that I can breathe from that, and checking it. If it doesn't work for me, then I can ask for my primary back, and we can buddy breathe. But no, I wouldn't like pause to make sure that the other diver has calmed down before checking to see if that second stage is working. Bodie 1994 says, why can't you run the octo over the left shoulder? The regulator will be facing up and the hose will be a little longer. Then run your submersible pressure gauge over the right shoulder. What do you think? It just gets a little crowded over your shoulder. It's quite nice to be able to separate them, and you get this weird kind of loop bite over your right hand side if you have your octo over your right hand. So yeah, it kind of gets in the way and it's kind of annoying. It depends on the first stage configuration, but yeah, usually in a traditional like recreational regulator setup, it's just easier just to have your alternate just go under your right arm. Submersible pressure gauge. Some divers do have their submersible pressure gauge come over the left-hand side, or over your left-hand shoulder, and they run it down next to their corrugated hose. Again, it just kind of comes down to, it's unlikely, but if you're grabbing for things and you grab for a hose, you grab a hose and it just happens to be your submersible pressure gauge when actually you wanted your corrugated hose, or you wanted to disconnect your low pressure inflator hose. Sometimes it is quite nice to have them like really separated so that in an emergency, if you're having a runaway ascent, you're grabbing for hoses or something, you don't want the like, oh, is that my high pressure hose or is that my low pressure inflator? It's kind of nitpicky, but that's kind of it. If you want to run your high pressure submersible pressure gauge over your left hand shoulder, yeah, fine. If that works for you, that's perfectly fine. But with a long hose like your alternate, your octo hose, it does get a little bit. It's quite nice when it's tucked down underneath your arm. It's less likely to catch on things. So if you're swimming through restrictions, then yeah, it's less likely to grab hold of something. But hey, whatever works for you, really. It's just a lot neater if it's like under your arm. And usually when you're using it, you need to donate. I kind of do this like little arm flip, and that flips it over my right hand shoulder anyway. When I'm donating it, so yeah, it's just I'd rather do it then as opposed to like before every single dive. BL3D0 says, what is some basics in getting set up with dual tanks or side mounted tanks? Most divers start with a single cylinder, but no one talks about moving into dual tanks or side mounts, and we don't know where to start. I mean, like GUE fundamentals is a good start. There are side mount courses. There are twin set courses, and it's best to do a course in like twins and especially side mount. So yeah, there are definitely courses out there. If you just search online, you'll find a decent instructor nearby. Yeah, as with most things scuba diving, it is something that you can just do yourself, but it's a lot better if you get proper instruction with it. There are so many, like, there's no one stopping you from buying a dry suit and just going dry suit diving. You're probably going to struggle for the first few dives trying to figure it out. Whereas if you do a proper dry suit course, you're going to do it much more safely and you're going to have proper instruction. The same with twins and side mount. Nothing is stopping you from buying all of the equipment and putting it together yourself. But it's going to be a lot better if you're doing it with an instructor in front of you saying, oh, actually, try putting the hose here or try doing this, and it's going to make you a lot more trim. Yeah, if you have a look online, I mean, my mind's when people ask for like getting into twin sets is GUE fundamentals, because they no twin sets, and they're going to sort of really put you straight as far as how you're diving, how your equipment's set up, and then you can go from there. But yeah, there are courses out there that you can take. Rebecca Darling, 58 to 94, says, I'd love to see an AskSmart video on foot care for divers, especially for a 4 to 5 dives per day liveaboard. I know some people dive full foot fins for this reason, but that can't be the only tip. Even dive guides and instructors struggle with foot care. Yeah, fin foot is a term where if you're not wearing the right size, like boots and fins, you can actually cut off blood flow to certain areas of your feet, and after the dive you get like quite bad swelling and discomfort. But yeah, just generally make sure that your boots and your fins fit you properly. If they like pinch or rub in any one particular area, it is honestly worth getting a different set. If they rub, I used to have a pair of boots that had a stitch, one particular stitch that would rub over the top of one of my feet, and socks is usually the best answer. A lot of people forget that socks exist when they like step on a dive boat, but yeah, if you've got a pair of shoes that rub, why aren't you wearing a pair of socks? A pair of socks just adds that extra like buffer layer, and they work just as well with dive boots. And also, if you're wearing like full foot fins that are a little bit too big, because they come in that like size range, don't they? Instead of like your specific foot size, it's like a range of sizes. If you're at the lower end of that spectrum, yeah, just wear a thicker pair of socks just to pad them out. You can even get neoprene socks as well for like free diving and stuff. So they can help to keep your foot warm, protect them. But yeah, a good pair of socks will help with that. After the dive, keep them dry. That's usually it's usually pretty easy, especially when you're on a dive boat. But yeah, you want to make sure they're clean and dry. That helps to prevent any like fungus buildup or anything. Also, look after your feet. I've done this myself. I know of at least 2 occasions. The first one, I stepped on a nail. And I'll tell you, going diving with a hole in the middle of your foot sucks. And I was like out in the middle of nowhere as well, so the only like way to clean it was with iodine. So yeah, my foot really hurt for a long time. And it's kind of okay for the first section of the dive, but after a while, because you're finning, your foot has to flex, and yeah, that really sucked. Another one, I was diving at a resort, and they had most of the place was just sand because it was a beachside resort, and they had this concrete step to get into one of the buildings, but they'd made it sand colored, and it was surrounded by sand. Of course, I didn't notice it, and I was walking full speed, and of course didn't see it and stubbed my big toe, and that ruined me. Needed like proper bandaging. But then every time you have to put it in your dive boot, you're like, oh my god, this is gonna suck. So yeah, look where you're going. Take a little bit more time just to scan the environment, make sure you're not going to step on anything, because yeah, trust me, salt water and open wounds just kind of sucks, especially when it's on your foot. Trying to get it in, because my dive boot at the time didn't have like zippered or laces or anything. It was one of the like slip-ons. So that I never looked forward to that. But of course, traveled halfway across the world, you want to go diving, and you can kind of switch it off after a little while. Your body gets used to it, but god, yeah, the first time that salt water kind of hits it, you're like, there it is. But yeah, it's mainly about keeping it dry, keeping it clean. And before the dive, I'm religious about brushing my feet and knocking or checking the inside of my boots. I think the first one's mainly because one of my first like big dive trips. We were diving somewhere very remote, and I remember one of my buddies put on a dive boot and went, "Oh," and quickly took it off, and he'd crushed a spider that had like made a little house inside of his dive boot. So I'm quite religious about checking the inside of my boots now. But it's more for like sand and grit, because one small piece of grit or sand inside of your boot and repetitive motion is going to create a sore. So just brush off your feet. I usually dive with a one of those changing mats. So lay that out first and be very strict about footwear and what footwear goes on that. And just keep your feet as clean as possible before the dive. After the dive, towel them off, make sure they're nice and dry, and just inspect for any kind of sores and whatnot. And just like air dry them. If you do have any swelling, is it RICE, the acronym? What is it? It's like rest, ice, compression, and elevation, I think. So put your feet up. And either use like a warm or a cold compress. I can't remember which. Elevate so that the any swelling can go down. But yeah, it mainly comes down to keep your feet dry and keep them clean. And that's it for another week. So thank you very much for listening, everybody. All the links to the articles that I was referring to are going to be down in the description underneath this video. Remember to head over to our website, scubadivermag.com. Check out all the awesome things that we're doing over there. Like, share, subscribe wherever you're listening to this. Thank you for listening, and everybody, of course, safe diving.